All right. So last week we really got into, or last Tuesday, I should say, still this week, we got into tracing the objective, right? Each objective, in this case, is just one, was kind of registering with the UI and how it's. I really focused over here. I didn't actually focus over here because this drew me into like these scriptable objects here and this pooling. And so how this script, creates a scriptable object. So I think this all traces back to the object itself. Right. So when the user, the player, is driving and their cart touches a pickup, these purple rings, they do a call to the objective. Reach checkpoint is here, and this type of like update objective is called, which is over in this parent class. Update objective, and it's saying, hey, I'm gonna like fire off an action, an event, if anyone is listening. That's what the question mark is for, null operator. We're going to invoke this action, basically call all the methods that are listening to us with this information here, this data. And so we have to figure out who's listening. And that's up here, this unity action on update objective. So here we have the notification HUD manager and the objective HUD manager are listening. So on this register object, when they register themselves with the objective here, so this over an objective, basically it says, hi, I'm an objective. I'm going to register myself with the objective manager. I'm going to go out and find the objective HUD manager, the objective notification manager, and I'm going to register myself with them. And that process of registering himself with the HUD manager, basically the HUD manager says, hey, I've got this method, this event listener, and I want to register to this event, this action on objective. So ultimately, all this boils down to this here gets called. So we're over on the objective HUD manager and also on the notification HUD manager. And then we spent a lot of time going through here. Basically, on update, go into the dictionary, and if we have an objective registered with a toast, so that's because with register objective, after it kind of registers a listener with the event, it first goes to here, and then this kind of sent us off into another rabbit hole because this gets created, primary objective prefab dot get object. And if you look at what this is, which is public, it's listed out in the inspector here, primary objective prefab. When you click on it, it's this thing over here, an asset, scriptable asset, a custom made asset. And this is a pooling. So remember we talked about it's very expensive to create and destroy game objects or component objects at runtime, so it's better to kind of create a bunch at the beginning and turn them all off and then reuse them as needed, and that's what an object pool is. And ultimately this scriptable object, where to go? Oh, scriptable objects. This scriptable object, which is kind of managing the pool and then saying, hey, which prefab should we be instantiating? This thing is coming from this script here. Pool object definition. Remember I said with scriptable objects, you say where the developer is allowed to create them. So create asset menu pool/object. So up here under assets, create, here's like a new folder, and here's a new scriptable object that you can create. We'll just basically run this script here, and it will create an instance of it, an object from this class, and that is the object here. And so it's an asset, it's not a component object this time. But basically, and then we spent time going through here, and this thing gets initialized up here at the game manager. So here, pool initializer. There's many pools. Here's the one that we're interested in. So this thing goes through each of them. It basically just calls the initialize on it. So initialize here. And basically it says, hey, make your parent wherever whoever called this, which was this is living on the game manager. And then this populate group is running. And this was kind of got a little annoying to get through. Or maybe not this one, but it was like when we call the next one. Anyway, so for each object we should create in the pool, we go through this while loop. And we basically we instantiate from that prefab. We create a game object, we name it, we set its parent, and we set it to false, and we add it to our pool. So all that is done before we get to this part here in the objective HUD manager. And the primary object prefab.getObject is called. So get object here in the pool object definition. Here it is, get object. And so this one was a little annoying to go through because it was just doing a lot of checks that didn't always make a lot of sense to me. But ultimately it says go into the pool of objects that we have and find me one that's turned off. It's not currently in use by another part of the UI. And then return that to me. And if we go through our whole pool, and if everything is in use at the moment, there's another function it's called that creates a few more for us. All right, so basically at the end of the day, this thing is responsible for creating these prefabs, objective toast primary. And remember, toast is kind of it's a weird term, but it means, it's like a UI term. It means to create like a little notice that doesn't distract the user during game time. And if you see here, it's a UI element. So it has a rect transform and this objective toast script. So what I did was I brought this in to show you it. So you could pop it in here. I think it went underneath objectives rectangle. Let me just reset that. Let me delete that because I moved it to a few different groups. And I think I kind of messed it up. There it is. So it's this thing right here. And this is the text that's being sent on it. Like, this is the title, something about how many objectives there are left. And if there's secondary information, it goes here. Like how many pickups you've gone through, like 2 out of 5 or whatever. This is how this text gets updated. And then this objective toast ultimately gets called. So if we go back to this HUD manager, it creates these prefabs. And then it goes into the dictionary and it maps the objective to the toast so we can easily find it later. And then this is where on update objective gets called. And it goes back into dictionary and says, hey, I've got this objective. Is there a toast that you can give me? And we get it. And then that's where this toast.set description and the counter, like that's where it all gets set. And then I was in this script too for a little bit. And what was interesting was going through the animations, how the animations are playing on it. And some interest, if I go back on the outside here, these animation curves were interesting to talk about. It's a more advanced way than just doing a lerping from A to B. You have like a custom curve you can lerp, or interpolate across. And that's what's happening. And there's like a little update loop in here somewhere. Here you go. So if we're fading in and not fading out, we're like messing with the alpha on the canvas group. That's this thing here. That's why it fades up. We can let it fade up and down with this value. And if it's moving in, at the same time that's fading up, it's going to move in. And so it's just messing with the X value on the rect transform, but it's sampling this curve that I just showed you on the outside. So it's basically moving it left to right like this, and then it does this little overpass, and then it kind of comes back and settles in. And that's because it's sampling this move-in curve. You know, start way to the left, -100, and over the amount of time of the animation, we come up to 0, but we pass it, and then we kind of settle back into the 0 position. All right, so that was all Tuesday. Let me delete this now because that's supposed to be created at runtime. And so that took the whole class. So I had to go through, pretty much going from the objective to the objective HUD manager to this pool object definition to this pool initializer and this objective toast. And then the notification HUD is a lot simpler. So this thing just registers itself with objectives. And basically it gets one string in, and if it's null or empty, if it's not, so if this, whatever this string that's coming in, if it's null or empty, is the string method. And so if it's not, so this would be true if it's null or empty, and this is the not, so this would basically flip it. So we'd only get to here if it is not null or not empty. And that means we create some type of notification. And the notification looks like, so here we have this notification pooling right here. Very similar. It's a pool object definition, and somehow it has to be initialized. It looks like it's exactly the same, pretty much. There's just some initialization, and then some get object. All right, and the notification toast is this prefab. So if you pop it underneath here, we can see, looks like it's down in here. You just turn it on and off. Yeah, so that's what these little notifications look like. Looks like we just have a background image, some color you can set, and then like some text going into it. That's cool. It looks like, I don't think the background, looks like the background image is like growing with it. That's, okay, it's got this content size fitter. Cool. So this image here is kind of growing with its child. I haven't seen that before. That's cool. So anyway, this white background will grow with the size of the text, whatever this notification is. And there's a notification toast, very similar to the objective toast, but it's probably going to be simpler. Yeah, it looks like it's just fading up the alpha, up and down. It looks like it hangs out for a certain amount of time and it goes away. So fade in for half a second and then wait 2 seconds and fade out. Visibility duration. Here. Fade in over quarter of a second, hang out for 2-3 seconds, and then fade out over 2 seconds. Cool. So delete that. That was a lot on Tuesday with the UI. So there's other parts of the UI, but I think I might take a little break from it unless people have other questions in particular about the UI. So I'm going to do all these checkpoints, the objectives. Oh, I know what I wanted. One thing I wanted to cover. I said the start finish line has a lap objective, it looks like, but it's not really set up. But if you didn't want to do laps, it looks like there's a way to set that up pretty quickly. What I did have yet to really cover, something that is new for this class, is how these multiple scenes. So how this is really meant to set up is you're supposed to start here, an intro scene, and then it leads you into the main scene, and then from main scene either lose or win. And so these are the build settings here. And let me just go back to each scene so you remember how they all work. So we have intro menu. Here's the different Unity scenes. So really the game starts here, like if you were to build it into like a Windows executable or something, and somebody would start it, it actually starts here. So when you're building your game, you might want to... Oh, it's really loud. Let me kill the Unity sound. Okay. So when you're like showing off your game in a week and a half and you make your video, you might want to actually start it from here. You know, it's pretty light. Okay, it still blew my ears out. But, oh, hub, my fault. All right, hold on a sec. Let's make sure I'm not going to kill my ears. Okay. As you build your own little custom game, you know, you might as well think about starting here. You know, you put your name in. So they just took the player character, and if you notice, they is everything still active on it? Because it looks like no. I think if I can click play, you'll notice that this was a prefab that came in, and they took all this stuff off. It's not interactive, and this script is just rotating it. That's how you get this little. He's just kind of sitting there idling with this animation, and it's just rotating around. So that's what this rotating axis is doing. So you can't do anything with them. All right, there's some audio, and there's this character. So like you can swap this out. You can put it in the name of your game. The controls pretty much stay the same unless you've switched them up. But that's what this thing does. Just gives you some guidance to the game. And then when you click play, we're going to go from intro scene, and we're going to load up main scene. So I'm going to click play. Notice over here, main scene loading. And all the other stuff was destroyed. Now we're in the main scene. And we're playing. And we either win or lose. If we just sit there and let the time run out, you know, we go into the lose scene. Or if you play the game. Oops. Light glitched out on me. I'm not that bad at driving. Anyway, I extended the track. It's going to take me a little longer to finish. But if you notice over here, we're going to be in main scene. And once we... What's the finish line? Oh, see, there's a notification. Checkpoint left. And boom, we hit it, all objectives. And then if we wait up here, we'll see that this will get destroyed, and we'll see that the win scene will load. See win scene. And we go play again, and we'll jump back into main scene. All right, so how's that all happening? So for an intro scene, we really just have this play button. So we go into the UI canvas, and we go down into the start button. And these are all UI stuff. So we go to game object UI, like all the UI elements are right here. But this is just a button. So this provides like all the interactivity right out of the box, so you don't really need to know how to build UIs, which is really cool. All you got to know is that each UI element, like a button, will have an event, like on click, and you add a listener. In this case, it's over here on the start button. There's a script, and you see it's going on the load scene button dot load target. So what does that mean? On here, the start button. There's a script. There's a script component object here. Load scene button. And notice it's saying scene name. We're going to load in main scene. That's the string. So if I open up the script, it just has a public method. That's what the button event was calling. And it just calls here and just says, hey, call this Unity engine.scene management.scene manager. Notice the namespace. Dot load scene async, meaning keep playing the game, but behind the scenes start loading up the other scene. Don't stop it. And just when it's all loaded up, then switch over. And then which scene? I don't know. Well, here's the string. That's what this public string is. So that's all you have to do to load up scenes. Well, what you really have to do is go to build settings, and any scenes you want to load up need to be up here. You just kind of drag them in from your project into here and click them on. And the first one is what will be loaded up at runtime, like when you do Windows executable or whatever. This is the first one that'll load up. All right, so we load into here, and there's this load scene button. So when user clicks start, we're going to load up this one, main scene. Pretty straightforward. Just put them all in your build settings here. And then in main scene, this is our main scene, and it's our game manager. I believe it's the game flow manager that might check we have win or lose, and if it's, yeah, so this end game here in the update loop, end game true or false. So end game, lockout, like I guess show the mouse cursor, stop the time, and then whatever we pass in, is it, I mean, there's only 2 game states, but whatever. So this is like fades the scene, like fade to black basically. And if win, then the scene to load will be whatever the win scene name is. And I guess that's just sitting up here somewhere. Yeah, win scene name, and there must be a lose scene name. There you go. And basically play some audio and show some type of win display message. Else, we're going to load up the lose scene, show the lose message. But where is this actually loaded? Oh, and so I guess that like gets all set up. Like this is run once, like here. And then what happens is we go back into the next frame, the next update loop, and then we notice that we're not in play mode anymore. We're not, oh, there's more than win or lose. Okay. Never mind. There's play, there's won, or there's lost. Maybe there's more. But if we're not in play mode anymore, then we know that we won or lost. So I guess it's just 3 states. And then that's when we come in, yada yada, like cut down. It's like slowly cut down the audio over a certain amount of time, fade up that end game fade screen over time. And when a certain amount of time passes, we're going to load up our scene and then enter into play. I don't know why we're going to enter into play, because we're going into win or lose, which isn't a playable state, but whatever. So here we load into, let's just say we won. So then we load into win scene, and it looks like this. And again, we have these 2 buttons. So here's our UI. Here's the restart button. And it looks like when you click here, we're going to call this right here, load screen button. It's the same thing, just we're going to load the main scene. Yeah, it's the exact same script. Cool, so that's how we're loading. You can change the win and lose. These are just flat graphics, textures, so you can change this all out. It's just text and textures, so you can change out whatever you want. and the lose scene is going to be probably just exactly the same. You probably could have just done the win and lose scene as one scene, just do a bunch of settings like set the background image, set the text. Yeah, it's the same stuff. Cool. Any requests on any needed areas before I pet hunt around and see what else to talk about? Maybe I'll go back to the player and dig a little bit deeper into how the cart is working for the probably the rest of class or whatever. Unless anyone is stuck on some idea. Okay, let me just check the game manager real quick. Yeah, game flow manager, objective manager. Yeah, we pretty much went over the big ones. So, let me just, yeah, these are about animations. Don't really worry about them too much. Let me just dig a little bit and just make sure there's no other scripts sitting around. Colliders, visuals, wheels. No, I see this cart bounce right here, so I thought maybe there's like another script sitting around somewhere, but I don't see it. So audio manager. All right. No one has any questions. Let me just dig back into Arcade Cart. So we kind of went through this script at a high level. Like I did focus on kind of these stat power-ups, like system serializable. So it's kind of it's a class, but it only has like it's more like a structure. I was talking about structs, like you have these like public kind of variables, and there's no methods. So here we have a public struct. This is more similar to like a struct. It's a lot of just exposed variables, but no methods. So it's a little different than a class, but you still make objects from them. And then here's our stats, and notice it's like a struct, so you have to create like an object of this, and it's serializable, meaning it'll show up in the Unity inspector. And we have all this stuff like top speed, acceleration, reverse speed, everything that kind of all the settings that are useful for a player. Then we have this operator, so if you ever do like one stats object plus another one, you actually have a definition of what that means. Because remember, it's like a number plus a number makes sense, but what does an object plus an object mean? Well, you have to kind of define what that means for each object. So this is how you add together two stats objects. So this is more like if you pick a power up or something, and for a brief moment of time, you had some type of changes to your stats. And here's the base stats right here. And here's like some variables. How much percent are we on air, ground, based on tires? So when do we determine we're in air or in the ground? We did a whole bunch of public variables. The wheels, the center of mass, a bunch of drift stuff, a bunch of VFX stuff. Did I go through how a VFX system works with you guys? I don't remember if I did it in the 2D game. I don't know if I went through like a particle system, just like how the parts of it are functioning. Just let me know. I can't remember right now. Anyway, suspensions and the physical wheels. So all this public stuff, it's a lot. And then here's our private stuff. So our internal variables. You don't think I did? Okay. Since I mentioned it, I think maybe it'd be worth looking at one. So like trails. So here's all our VFX systems down here. So checkpoint confetti is always a popular one. So I'll bring it in, I'll press the F key, to zoom up wherever it is. It's behind this tree. That's kind of annoying. I'll move it over here. Why don't I just move it over where the player is? So this is a particle system. It's a game object, but notice a component is particle system. It's a really complicated component, many parts of it. Particle systems have like their little kind of own times system, timeline. So you notice here we're simulating the particle system right now, but we can stop it, we can play it, we can restart it. So you need to like simulate the particle system to see what it's doing to be able to like build it and adjust it. So here, there's others here that you can look at, drifts and jump dust and what have you. But here we notice we're like play speed is 1, like normal speed, play time. It just keeps going and going. Sometimes like there's like a set amount of time. This one just keeps going. This says how many particles are there at any instant. So notice there's like 200 at the big pop, and then they like sit to around 100. And this is how long it's been running. I've been running it for about 40 seconds. But normally this thing just like plays once and then it like turns off or gets destroyed. And the real details of it are here. So the way these particle systems work is you have a bunch of properties sitting up at the top part of it, and then you have a bunch of like tabs that are, some are turned on, some are turned off, right? So for example, force over lifetime, if I open it up, there's some more properties, and I'll look at them because I know that this one is turned on. So there's a lot of like additional sections of settings, and some are turned on, some are turned off. Now, should it be like looping or should it play once? Do we have to wait a little bit when we first start it, or do we start right away? So the start lifetime, this is how long does each little graphic is a particle. Particles can look 3D, but they're really, usually 99% of the time, they're 2D. It's just little 2D graphics. They call it billboarding. Billboarding means the 2D graphic is always going to be like checking where the main camera, the player camera is, and like rotating towards it, so you get like the full view of the graph. Like the issue with 2D graphics, if you look at it from the side, it's like flat. It's going to like look weird. So, but if you take 2D graphics and you like animate them, and they're always pointing toward the camera, you can make them look 3D. So they're cheap. They're cheap graphics. And you can imagine, like, if you had to create all these as 3D objects, there's like 200 at once, you would like kill your processing. So to get away with many particles, we do them in 2D most of the time. All right, so lifetime, each particle is living for 1.5 seconds, so I can like change it. Here they're gonna live a little bit longer. Here they're living for like 4 seconds, but they might be like shrinking or stuff. Here I'll make it I'll make it like a 1/2 second. And it looks like, oh no, I'm sorry, that was the speed. So I'll ramp up the speed again. Looks like they need to like shoot forward pretty hard. That's like the start velocity. But if I take the lifetime to like 0.05, notice how they like die out really fast, right? So here I am, just keep tuning parameters, and sometimes like if I ramp it up, you see how they're like shooting really far. But so this is like a VFX artist, tech artist would go in here. A start size 0.1 and 0.3. So usually this might mean like X and Y. So this means, okay, random between 2 constants. So the start size will be any number between 0.1 and 0.3. So I'll ramp this up to like 5. Now notice how much bigger they are. Right. So here you can start creating all type modifications of the VFX stuff. They're not rotating at all. That's fine. Start color. So this means a random color along this gradient. So anything from this like purple to this yellow. All right. So again, you can just change what you want. Now suddenly my VFX has changed. Gravity. So each particle will get pulled down by a random number from 2 to 5. So if you change that, they'll like drop a lot faster. So this is all like the starting situation, right? Simulation, yeah, the rest of this you wouldn't really mess with. Max particles in the system, clamp out at 600. So that was the fun part of the initial spawning of them. Now we can look at the emission. So this isn't emitting over time, emitting over distance. It looks like it's bursting 100 once with an interval, a very small interval. So I'm just watching it. So it looks like there's like the previous cycle still exists when a new cycle starts. That's why it's going 1, 2, 1 like that. But it's bursting out 100 at a clip. So you could change it. I'm not going up to like 1,000 because I'm gonna like probably kill it. But here's what 500 looks like. A lot, you know. Oh, it's like 500 and then 100. 500, 100. 500, 100. I don't know. It looks to me like a cycle of 1. Somewhere else is saying like 500, 100. Oh, because probably this, because we're clamping at 600 up here. So let me just open this up to like 1,000. You have to be careful because this stuff can like hog your system. But now I've got 500, 500, and 1,000 can be, or 2 cycles. Still, kind of all their particles exist at the same time, just the way that the system is running. All right, I'm gonna lower it back down so that I'm not gonna crash anything for me. That's emission, and then this is the shape. The shape that it's being emitted from. So you need to like start from somewhere. This, you can see this cone shape right here. This is where the particles, this cone shape is like, they're like somewhere in this cone, each particle will be created on start. So you can change these things up. And there's different types of volumes that you can spawn stuff from. It's just a cone, but I mean you can try this stuff. Here, everything is coming out of this circle here. And you see how it has a big impact on this kind of initial spawning. So anyway, this is the shape, that the region that you'll be spawning from. Inherent velocity controls the emitter. Oh, the emitter's not really moving. It's like the particles inheriting velocity from the emitter. But if the emitter was moving, like it's parented to like the player, and you're driving along, it's going to inherit the velocity from the player as well. That's not nothing's happening there. Force over time. So we're going to go pretty hard in the Z. Z is forward and a little bit up. So if I ramp this up to 100, you see how they're like flying, like they're almost race car. It's kind of cool. They're like moving down the race car track because they're getting a much higher force around the Z. All right, I'll go back to normal, and I'll ramp up 2 maybe. And they'll like jump. They should jump up a little higher before they get pulled down by gravity. Gravity's still having a strong effect on them. But I guess based on the rotation of this thing, Y is like. Let's try X right here. There you go. X is up. Just because this thing is rotated somehow. Yeah, we have this rotation. Z to 90. Anyway. You can change color over lifetime. Speed can affect color. There's a whole bunch of stuff you can do. Size over lifetime. So you see this thing just shrinks it down. But I could add a point here and I could like spike it up. I can make them grow. For some reason I can't move it above 1. But anyway, this holds bigger and then it drops down. Or any other such shape that you want. Right? And then you can have like size be impacted by speed. Rotation doesn't really make sense in this one, just got a little tail behind it. Noise, add noise turbulence to the movement. So just some like randomness. You want to increase like the amount of noise, jitteriness. So here they're like kind of jittering, like little fairy flies or something, or I don't know. That they're not just going forward. They kind of maybe a little magical or they're a little alive now because they've got this random movement to them. And so here's the random pattern that's using and how strong you're doing it with. Here's the trails. So this is attaching. These are what these little trails are. I'm just going to kill the noise for right now because it's hard to see the trails. But you can like, so that's no trail. Then I'll make the trail like really long. This probably makes it really long. Size affects width. Color, you can affect the color of it. Die with the particle. Yeah, particles have to die. They have a lifetime, then they have to die. Like you can't just keep spawning particles and just like fill the screen. Width over tail. Here we go. Let me ramp this up. So now you got really thick trails. You can mess with the color or whatever. And the render. This is what I'm talking about. Billboard. So by default, everything's going to be like 2D billboard, meaning face the camera. But you can also do meshes and stuff with, but normally you don't do that because it's expensive. All right, and there's a million different ways to make VFX and particles. It's like making shaders and materials. So you can experiment with them, but I just showed you how like this whole component, all these like turn on and off, all those properties you can change. All right. Any questions with that? So I'm going to delete that. Let me know if anything about VFX. And with the little systems, these are VFX systems. You can tell them to play or stop or change certain properties about them. It's kind of like audio or animation. You can play and stop them and change stuff about them. I'm just going to look through this for a little bit. I think I'm going to be careful with my time because I still have 2 more lectures. So I think I want to spend next week on the player. Could you modify the VFX to be something that just constantly runs? If you wanted to add wind to the game, would this be a good way? Yeah, you mean wind as in visual effects of the wind? You would see the wind flying all the time? Yeah, exactly. I mean, it might be like little localized. Usually it's not going to be like a global thing, but you could put little VFX systems around. I'm just trying to look at this dust thing. This one doesn't look apparently. Copy this position. It's a little hard to see. Let me take a look at it with the player. But yeah, you would put little VFX like whenever you see like dust, like in the West or something. If video games in the Wild West, you'll see like the dust things floating across and. And you could have VFX just running all the time. It's just like an atmospheric thing. Let me see if I can see it. I don't really see it in the play mode. Maybe it only simulates in. Yeah, this dust thing isn't doing it for me. Um, but yeah, you could, if like say if stuff's burning in the background and you're trying to create the atmosphere that like you're in a city that's destroyed or something, like this smoke might be just like running all the time. Or if like a chimney is going and you're simulating like a campfire is going for the entire game level, then yeah, the smoke VFX would just like run all the time. When you make it a child of the camera, similar to how objects follow the player around. Again, it depends the look and feel you do. There's some VFX that's right on the camera, like those silhouette, like that fade up and fade down. Some things you want, yeah. There's like sometimes if you notice in games where they're making it feel like it's raining, you'll see like little raindrops like constantly hitting the camera, and that's VFX that's being played right in the screen space. Um, but yeah, if you want like things to be like smoke coming in on the edges of the camera view, you can like make the smoke like a child of the camera and just position them, so that they're always like where you want them off screen and the smoke's coming in a little bit. Yeah, you can be. That's the whole point of being a game designer. Is if you have these ideas, you experiment with them, and you never know what type of effects you'll get. Cool. I'm gonna stop the lecture because I'm gonna run out of material for next week. So it looks like it's gonna take me like for Tuesday and Friday to go through like this arcade cart. Then I'll be done lecturing on the karting game. So unless you have any questions, I'm gonna call it on the lecture. Cool. Yeah, you have a good one. Have a good weekend. I'll see you on Tuesday.
Have a wonderful day, Professor.
You too. Have a good one.